The Amistad Research Center's legacy of fortitude is rooted in the Amistad Incident of 1839, in which 53 Africans were abducted and sold in violation of international law. Attempting to regain their freedom, they revolted. They were jailed and charged with piracy and murder. A group of abolitionists, with help from former President John Quincy Adams, took their case to the United States Supreme Court, which eventually ruled the Africans were free people. The Amistad Research Center celebrates Juneteenth by honoring all who faced oppression and adversity with great courage. These images and text relate to key historical events, illustrating the fortitude of the African American community in Louisiana.
The first two ships carrying enslaved Africans arrived in Louisiana in 1719. Most enslaved Africans brought to the state came from the Senegambian region, and by 1795, the population of enslaved Africans in Louisiana numbered close to 20,000. New Orleans became the largest slave market in the nation. At the start of the Civil War in 1860, the number of enslaved individuals in Louisiana stood at 331,726.
Those who found themselves as the enslaved did not always actively accept their condition of servitude. It is estimated that there were over 250 slave uprisings in the antebellum South. The largest of these was the Revolt of 1811, when 200 to 500 individuals armed themselves in a violent rebellion, marching from plantation to plantation, beginning from what is now known as La Place, Louisiana, to New Orleans.
Reconstruction brought both gains and losses to the African American. The institution of restrictive laws was in force. Black codes, as they were called, governed and limited liberties granted to the newly freed enslaved, as well as gaining seats in the American government. In less than a decade, more than 200 African American lawmakers were elected and served during Reconstruction. This gave rise to retaliatory forces attempting to reverse these gains. On July 30, 1866, conflict erupted between a group of New Orleans police, firemen, and ex-Confederates, and an African American delegation seeking entrance into the Louisiana Constitutional Convention. A mob surrounded the building and rushed in and attacked the delegates. Conflict spread into the streets, and over 270 people were killed or wounded, many of them African Americans.
That incident galvanized national opposition to the moderate Reconstruction policies of President Andrew Johnson. Republican victories in Congress led to the Reconstruction Acts of 1867, which called for new constitutional conventions. In September of that year, 49 white and 49 black delegates attended the Louisiana Convention and ratified a new state constitution in March 1868. This Bill of Rights was the first in Louisiana to establish integrated public schools and eradicate the state's black codes. Though Oscar J. Don was born into slavery and later freed, Don became the first elected black lieutenant governor of a U.S. state, serving from 1868 to 1871. Born free in Georgia in 1837, Pinckney Benton Stewart Pinchback was elected to the Louisiana State Senate in 1868 and became acting lieutenant governor following the death of Oscar J. Don. He then served as interim governor of Louisiana, becoming the first African American to serve as a U.S. governor.
Tension between white Democrats and the Republican federal government led to disruptive conflicts throughout the state. In 1873, an all-African American militia seized the Grant Parish Courthouse, fearing a Democratic takeover. A mob of over 150 white men, most members of the Ku Klux Klan and the White Citizen League, surrounded the courthouse, demanding their surrender, and over 75 African American men were shot on sight and hanged. The Colfax Massacre is considered the single bloodiest incident of racial violence recorded during the Reconstruction era.
A few graduates of Strait University formed the Comité des Citoyens Citizens Committee, a civil rights group dedicated to fighting the unjust treatment of freedmen, the Black Codes, and the Separate Car Act of 1890, which forbade African Americans to ride in white-only cars.
On June 7, 1892, one of its most prominent members, Homer Plessy, a fair-skinned man of Haitian and French descent, purchased a first-class ticket and boarded an East Louisiana Railroad car reserved for white only. Plessy's action was a part of a coordinated effort by the Comité des Citoyens to challenge Jim Crow laws of the South. In the following article, the editor of The Crusaders, a black daily publication, comments on the irony of the Black Codes and the U.S. Constitution.
To be or not to be? Among the many schemes devised by the Southern statesmen to divide the races, none is so audacious and so insulting as the one which provides separate cars for black and white people on the railroads running through the state. It is a slap in the face of every member of the black race, whether he has the full measure or only 1/8 of that blood.
It goes on to say,
"We are American citizens, and it is our duty to defend our constitutional rights against the encroachments and attacks of prejudice."
Sounds familiar?